we're watching the Biden, Garland Justice Department be weaponized, that you are using your authorities now to advance far-left policies and attack Republican-led state actions and erode constitutional norms. The most recent case in point has been brought up this morning. Your memorandum directing the FBI and other Department of Justice officials to get involved in local school board debates. It concerns us that it was issued just 5 days after the National School Board Association sent a letter to President Biden which referred to concerned parents as the equivalent of, quote, domestic terrorists and perpetrators of hate crimes, unquote. Given the timing of all this, your memo appears to have been motivated by politics more than any pressing federal law enforcement need. This is concerning to us, and it's worthy of investigation. It also concerns us that your actions may have been motivated by your family's financial stake in this issue. Published reports show that your son-in-law co-founded a company called Panorama Education. We now know that that company publishes and sells critical race theory and so-called anti-racism materials to schools across the country. And it works with school districts nationwide to obtain and analyze data on students, often without parental consent. On its website, the company brags that it's surveyed more than 13 million students in the U.S. It's raised $76 million from powerful investors, including people like Mark Zuckerberg, just since 2017. My first question is this: are you familiar with Title V of the Code of Federal Regulations, which addresses the rules of impartiality for executive branch employees and officials?
I am very familiar with it, and I want to be clear once again that there's nothing in this memorandum which has any effect on the kinds of curriculums that are taught or the ability of parents to complain about the kinds of...
I understand your position on the free speech of parents.
It is
wait just a minute. The question is, the thing that has concerned many of those parents that are showing up at these school board meetings, the very basis of their objection and their vigorous debate, as you mentioned earlier, is the curricula, the very curricula that your son-in-law is selling. So to millions of Americans, I mean, my constituents, I was home all weekend, I got an earful about this. They're very concerned about that. Subpart E of that federal regulation says an employee of the executive branch is discouraged from engaging in conduct that's likely to affect the financial interest of someone close to them. Your son-in-law, your daughter, clearly meets that definition. And so the question is, did you follow that regulation? Did you have the appropriate agency ethic official look into this? Did you seek guidance as the federal regulation requires?
This memorandum is aimed at violence and threats of violence.
I understand that, but did you seek ethics counsel before you issued a letter that directly relates to the financial interest of your family? Yes or no?
This memorandum does not relate to the financial interests of anyone. It's against...
I take that as a no. I take that as a no.
Memorandum is against violence and threats of violence.
Will you, Mr. Attorney General, will you commit to having the appropriate ethics designee review the case and make the results public?
This memorandum is aimed at violence and threats of violence.
I understand your talking point. You're not answering my question, Mr. Attorney General. With all due respect, will you submit to an ethics review of this matter, yes or no?
There's no company in America, or hopefully no law-abiding citizen in America, who believes that threats of violence should not be prevented.
March 25th, Joe Biden criticizes the Georgia election law. 3 months later, the Department of Justice challenges it. September 1st, Joe Biden criticizes the new pro-life law in Texas. 8 days later, the Department of Justice challenges it. September 29th, the political organization asked President Biden to involve the FBI in local school board issues. 5 days later, the Department of Justice does just that. Mr. Attorney General, was it just a coincidence that your memo came 5 days after the National School Boards Association letter went to the President?
So we are concerned about violence and threats of violence across the board against school officials, against...
Is there any connection, Mr. Attorney General, with the school board letter and then 5 days later your memo to regarding school board issues?
Obviously, the letter, which was public and asked for assistance from the Justice Department, was brought to our attention.
You said, in recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, threats of violence.
Yes.
When did you first review the data showing this so-called disturbing uptick?
So I read the letter, and we have been seeing over time threats.
Whoa. I didn't ask you. So you read the letter. That's your source?
So let me be clear. This is not a prosecution or an investigation.
Is there some study, some effort, some investigation someone did that said there's been a disturbing uptick, or you just take the words of the National School Board Association?
When the National School Board Association, which represents thousands of school boards and school board members, says that there are these kind of threats.
Attorney General Garland, do you know where Broad Run High School is? Do you know where Broad Run High School is? It's in Ashburn, Virginia, in Loudoun County, Virginia. Do you know why I care? Because I'm a graduate of Loudoun Valley High School. Despite my family having Texas roots back to the 1850s, I grew up in Loudoun. It was my home. And also I care because on October 6th, a mere 15 days ago, inside Broad Run High School in Loudoun County, Virginia, a young girl was sexually assaulted. Attorney General Garland, are you aware that because Loudoun County prosecutors confirmed that the boy who assaulted this young girl in Broad Run High School is the same boy who wore a skirt and went into a girl's bathroom, sodomized and raped a 14-year-old girl in a different Loudoun County high school on May 28th? Are you aware of those facts? The boy was, are you aware firmly, are you aware further that the boy was arrested and charged for the first assault in July but released from juvenile detention?
This sounds like a state case, and I'm not familiar with it. I'm sorry.
Do you agree with Loudoun parents who said it is not okay to allow a child that has been charged with a rape to go back into a school in that public school system?
Again, I don't know any of the facts of this case, but the way you put it, it certainly sounds like I would agree with you. But I don't know the facts of the case.
Is the FBI or the Department of Justice investigating the Loudoun School Board for violating civil rights or under authority of, say, the Violence Against Women Act?
I don't believe so, but I don't know the answer to that.
I'd ask why not, because on June 22nd at a school board meeting in Loudoun County, Virginia, the superintendent, Scott Ziegler, declared in front of the father of the girl who had been raped that the predator, transgender student, or person simply does not exist. And that to his knowledge, we don't have any records of assaults occurring in our restrooms. When this statement bothered the father of the girl, I'm a father of a daughter, I believe you are too, sir, the girl who had been raped, sodomized in the bathroom of a high school by a dude wearing a skirt, that father reacted. Now, that father reacted by simply using a derogatory word. Would that statement have bothered you if your daughter had been raped, if somebody said that it didn't occur?
Again, I don't know anything about the facts of this case, but derogatory words are not what my memorandum is about.
Are you aware that Loudoun County failed to report this sexual assault according to state law? And are you investigating this?
Again, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about this case.
Are you aware that the Virginia General Assembly, run by Democrats, voted for and Democrat Governor Ralph Northam signed a bill allowing schools to refrain from reporting instances of sexual battery, stalking, violation of a protective order, and violent threats occurring on school property? Is the FBI investigating how this may conflict with the Violence Against Women Act or conflict with your own domestic terrorism efforts?
I don't know anything about the Virginia legislation.
I was going to do another subject in my questioning, Mr. Attorney General, but I've been so concerned by the interjection about the October 4 memo that I'm going to follow up on that, if I might. The memo is a one-pager. You read it before it was issued, I assume.
I certainly did, and I worked on it.
Okay. Now, in that memo, you issued a directive to the FBI. You directed the FBI to conduct meetings with leaders of all levels of government across the country, in every judicial district, to strategize against an alleged trend of, quote, harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence. You didn't cite examples to distinguish legitimate First Amendment activity from criminal activity, nor certainly examples of a nationwide scope or severity of such acts to constitute a rise or spike in criminal activity, which you alleged in the memo. You directed the FBI to act with speed. Meetings in 30 days is what you said. You directed the FBI to have these meetings nationwide, coordinated by United States attorneys. 3 days later, I and 30-some-odd members of Congress asked for advance notice of these meetings, indications of what content would be shared there. Are these meetings occurring?
I don't know whether they're ongoing, but I expect and hope that they are going, yes, because I did ask that they take place.
You do not have any report, or you have not pursued at all to know what the progress is of your directive to do this within 30 days. Have meetings in every judicial district across the country. You just don't know.
I doubt there have been meetings in every jurisdiction. I expect there have been in some jurisdictions, and I hope so, because that's the purpose of the memo.
Doesn't that make it worse, Mr. Attorney General? You don't even know if these meetings that you directed urgently to occur are even occurring. What is left, indeed, of the memo except except your use of federal law enforcement moral authority to stigmatize a widespread movement of First Amendment activity, at least a significant portion of which is directed as opposed to the ideology upon which your son-in-law makes his living. That is the problem, and it is no answer, I would submit, Mr. Attorney General. If you were on the bench, you would not accept an answer from counsel that simply repeated your opposition to threats of violence nationwide.
Mr. Garland, Facebook has admitted in a letter to the Arizona Attorney General that it, quote, allows people to share information about how to enter a country illegally or request information about how to be smuggled, close quote. 8 U.S.C. 1324 criminalizes aiding and abetting entry into the U.S. By illegal aliens. Have you sent a letter or issued a memorandum similar to the 10-421 memorandum directing departmental resources to be dedicated to investigating the apparent violation of law, similar to the one? Have you done that?
I haven't seen the letter or information that you're talking about, but if it was sent to the department, I'll make sure that we look at it.
It has been reported that Mark Zuckerberg also spent over $400 million in a, quote, carefully orchestrated attempt, close quote, to influence the 2020 election. Those efforts have been referred to as a, quote, private takeover of government election operations, close quote. Have you sent a letter or issued a memorandum directing departmental resources be dedicated to investigate these claims?
I don't know what was done in 2020 in the previous administration of the Justice Department.
We're talking about the election of 2020. All of this has come out since then, and you've not,
I don't know.
totally unaware of that?
I'm not aware of what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
So you have not sent a memo, or you're not investigating that either. Last Sunday, more than 300 churches in Virginia aired a video featuring Vice President Harris advocating the election of Terry McAuliffe as governor of Virginia. This appears to violate Section 501c3 of the IRS Code, as well as other election laws, and seems to be an orchestrated effort by the VP and McAuliffe to violate the law. Have you sent a letter or issued a memorandum directing departmental resources be dedicated to investigating this apparent violation of law, similar to the letter you issued, or excuse me, the memorandum you issued on October 4th targeting parents who exercise their First Amendment rights at local school boards?
No.
On May 24th, 2021, under oath before a congressional committee, Dr. Anthony Fauci denied the National Institute of Health provided any funding for gain-of-function research, saying, quote, that categorically was not done, close quote. Today, this very day, the NIH issued a statement contradicting that testimony, which suggests that Dr. Fauci may have committed perjury. This is a criminal offense, and I'm left to wonder if you intend to look into that and send a communication such as a letter or a memo similar to the October 4th memo that you issued regarding parents going to school board meetings to investigate Dr. Fauci's potential perjury.
Again, I'll refer to the long-standing departmental norm that we don't comment about investigations pending or unpending. The general point that you're making normally would come with a referral from the relevant committee, but other than that, I can't say anything.
The actual point I'm making is you chose, as a response to a letter from the National School Board Association, and as you said earlier today, newspaper accounts, to issue a memorandum to organize task force and investigate and put a chill on parents' participation before school boards. Now you say, oh, I didn't mean to provide a chill, but that's exactly what any sentient being would have assumed would happen when you asked the federal government to begin looking into this. Of course parents are going to be nervous now. Of course people will step back. That's the purpose of my questioning. So when we get to these things like Zuckerberg, Facebook, Kamala Harris, we get to, and Dr. Fauci's purported perjury, there's no indication. You didn't hold back. You issued a press release. Do you see the distinction?